8 o'clock, and you're watching Let's Kill Twitter with me, Julian Hall. This is the show that aims to detox your timeline with the art of conversation. But fortunately, I don't have to do that lofty task alone. And tonight, joining me is the actor and writer Brendan Murphy. Now, before I introduce Brendan properly, just a little bit of admin. We are now streaming live, hopefully, on Twitch, on Facebook Live, and on YouTube. All of our shows, including this one, will be available on YouTube. So please do check us out there and give us a subscribe. That would be fantastic. If you want to engage with the show tonight, please do that through our Twitter account, which I've share screened next to me. All points hands in correct direction. Here it is. That would be fantastic. You can make comments, ask questions, share your favourite tweets of the week with us, all through the Twitter account. I mean, that's the name of the game, isn't it? Twitter. So, and also I can't be bothered to look at YouTube and Facebook for the other comments. So, without too much further ado, it gives me great pleasure to introduce Brendan to you. Brendan is, as I say, an actor and writer, but also a voiceover artist and an experienced improviser. And as an experienced improviser, he's a member of BBC Radio 1's BattleActs and was a guest player for Second City and Monkey Toast Players. Also, as one half of the Olivier Award-nominated Potted Potter, Brendan's toured extensively across the US and Canada, including a residency at Bally's Las Vegas, which won Best New Show at the Best of Las Vegas Awards in 2019. Brendan's other live comedy and theatre credits include his solo parody shows Friend, brackets the one with Gunter, so we'll definitely be talking about that tonight, and Buffy Revamped, which we'll also definitely be talking about as a huge fan of both shows. Friend is currently on tour and available to book now, and the Buffy show will be back next spring. I'm very excited about both of those. And finally, just to mention some of Brendan's screen credits, they include Man vs. Bee on Netflix, Broadchurch on ITV, and Sky Comedy Shorts on Sky Arts. Please welcome to the Zoom room, Brendan Murphy. Hello!
Hello!
Hello, how are
Hi!
you?
Wow, what an introduction.
Oh, good. I'm glad you liked that one. That was one of my less verbal diarrhea ones. So you're
No,
the first conversation I've had today, Brendan. Can't you tell?
oh, okay. It's going to be one of those conversations. just warming up into talking in general.
Totally. Back in the world. I'm still in lockdown. I'm still in my sort of Zoom box lockdown. But you're very much, I mean, I'm not, but sometimes it feels like it. You're very much
Yeah,
back in the world, aren't you? Tell
I
us more.
guess so. Yeah, I mean, getting back on stage was a big thing, for the first time. I did, must have been back in sort of June, the sort of first on-stage performance. We were doing my show Friend, the one with Gunther, we were filming it for streaming. So we had an audience, but they were all socially distanced, and it was a very strange affair. I didn't feel amazingly comfortable. It was a nice environment. There were lovely people. Lots of people that I knew were there. But now it's been a little while. I went up to Edinburgh Fringe. I've had a few more performances under my belt, so I'm feeling a bit more comfortable with it.
Yeah, I mean, as a performer, do you feel relatively, I'm just going to share this properly to Facebook, which is something that Restream should be doing but don't, so let me do that now. And hello Martin as well, one of our regular viewers, who's just tweeted in. But do you feel okay as a performer now, sort of getting into the sort of the end of the roadmap normal time zone, as it were?
Do I feel like comfortable?
Yeah, I mean, because some people are still in the kind of slightly limbo frame of mind with how they view the pandemic.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's kind of mad, obviously. We were all locked down for a year and a half and millions of people died. So it's kind of mad to get your head around that. And yet people are out on the tube and like not wearing masks. It doesn't quite sit well with me. And then our entire, live entertainment relies on lots of people gathering in spaces that are, pretty well ventilated, but still it's a lot of people coming and sitting down together. So it does feel strange, especially when performing sort of slightly smaller venues. It's also a necessary step. I'm not sure there's there was ever going to be a perfect time to reintroduce these things. And I'm glad from a professional point of view that I've been able to get back on stage and perform to people and just be in a room with people, you know, that sense of normality that we were lacking for so long. I think it'll feel like we've properly crossed that line and things are back to normal when
we have another bum fight Edinburgh, probably.
Well, yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I think like Vault Festival and Edinburgh
Right.
Festival are the real litmus test. And if also with like audience interaction, when like we've had to change so many things with performances as to how close you can go to people. You know, ideally there's no physical interaction, and not that I'm a particularly handsy performer, but a lot of things do rely on you being able to sort of get close and talk one-on-one with someone, and that brings everyone else into the room.
Yeah, totally. But what about the lockdown period itself? Did you find that creatively advantageous in terms of getting some space to do some writing?
Well, I mean, it was a mixed bag. I sort of went through, I think, stages that were quite common with a lot of creatives and probably just people in general, of thinking, okay, well, this is great. Finally, the chance to do everything that I'd been putting off or telling myself I didn't have enough time to finish that novel that I'd started, as well as the stage play and the TV adaptation of the last show I did and all these different things. That did not all quite happen. But there were developments. And I managed to finish one stage show. So that's probably enough. After a little while, I sort of realized that it was an absolute madness to try and expect myself to be at my most creative while the world was on fire.
Yeah, the world's been on fire since 2015 is my theory. But I understand. I totally understand what you're saying. I mean, it's been an odd time. It's sort of given and taken away, I suppose, sort of creatively. But there has also been a lot of pressure on people to kind of, let alone finish that novel, start it in some cases. So it's a strange time. I mean, there is a sense of relief that there is we have to get back to some sort of managed normality is kind of how I would prefer it. You mentioned masks, and I'm always actually really impressed by the number of people on the tube carriages that I go on that still are wearing them. It's actually worse on the seems to be worse on the overground trains, I feel, but there you go.
I mean, hey, it's good that people are feeling like they can return to normality, and I wouldn't ever sort of blame people for wanting to do. And also, there's very confused messaging. But hey, what can you do? There's still a little bit of anger that burns inside me, thinking, "Oh, you think you know it better than TFL, do you?"
Well, I mean, sometimes perhaps we do know better than TFL, but when there's a fair rise, anyway. I know what you mean. But let's not get into the culture wars too early.
No, of course not.
So what about your life? Well, good segue though. So your life online. What are you? What do you think about all the sort of the main channels? Obviously, we're in a show about Twitter, but probably feel free to feed in about Insta and Meta. And Insta, Meta, and what's the other one that I should be mentioning? Have I lost one? Have I missed one?
TikTok?
Yeah, well, or anything like that, really.
Maybe. I have a not a love-hate relationship. I just I wish I was better. I think that's it. Ultimately, I am annoyed that I'm not better at social media than I am. And I go through phases of thinking, I'll just tweet every day. I'll just send just one funny thing every day, because it is rewarding, and it's kind of setting yourself a little deadline, and I like the interaction. That's fun. But then I'll also fall off a cliff and just be like, oh God.
It's so funny you say, I wish it could be better, because most people say that about their lives generally, rather than say, I wish it could be better on social. But I do totally understand that, and I don't. I mean, did you stick to that I'll tweet one thing a day or not?
No, not at all. I mean, I think I've found that my relationship with posting social media tends to be if I'm out on tour or something, if I'm not interacting regularly with friends, then I will turn to the online
Dark side.
friendships,
Okay. Yeah.
the illusion of friendship, in order to cope. So if you see me tweeting and posting a lot, that means I'm not doing okay.
Yeah, that's
Please feel
okay.
free to step in and check that I'm okay.
Oh, that's interesting because I actually tweeted twice today, which is sort of unheard of for me. And the reason being is because the clocks are changing and I'm just going absolutely sort of bonkers because I hate it.
Well, it's different when you're promoting stuff as well. I think, you've got to let people know. Otherwise, how would they know to tune in? And more often than not, people always contact me after I've done a show or whatever it is and say, "Oh, I didn't know. Why didn't you tell me?" And I'm like, "Okay, well, maybe that is partly my fault."
Do you find? I mean, are you one of those people that prefers Insta because it's a bit sort of allegedly cuddlier, or?
Yeah, I mean, I guess there's less sort of direct conversation, isn't it? You just sort of post a thing. I like the, I suppose the version of myself I can be on there. But I haven't, what I'd really like, what I admire in other people in terms of their social media presence is the sort of abandon, the absolute carefree nature that some people will post with. I think, that's great. I'm way too concerned about how I'm likely to be interpreted.
Okay, which is kind of interesting from an artist's point of view, because in a way you feel like you might have broken that sort of, in a sense.
You'd think I would be able to get past it. It's mad because it also, I think it somewhat lies on this idea that anyone cares what I have to say.
Yeah.
And I think, oh my God, I'm going to be strung up for thinking my thoughts, but ultimately people are, I think, more concerned with what they're up to.
I suppose, yeah, that's true. I mean, it's a tricky one. You've got to obviously manage, as much as you can say, oh, a performer, I should be sort of liberated on Twitter, you still want to manage the brand, haven't you? So,
yeah,
and if there's anything that's kind of off message, as it were, it's a bit weird, really, because you can kind of slightly revolve your... I mean, unless you have multiple Twitter accounts, you see, that's where I think multiple Twitter accounts and possibly anonymous one. I know it's all kind of anonymous bots are bad, but if you wanted, if a person wanted to basically show different sides of their personality, and they have to sort of be mindful of, am I doing this through the prism of work? Or whatever it is, then you almost have to have multiple accounts, unless you're incredibly, unless it's basically, LinkedIn is for work, Twitter is for whatever it is, and Insta is for pictures of my meals or something. But
absolutely.
Is there anything that in terms of sort of engagements, and that's with the Twitter, Facebook, or Insta, that stick out in your mind as either being actually quite positive or sort of off-putting? Is it resonant?
Yeah, I mean, it's obviously I see a huge amount of benefit for it. You've got the sort of personal social interaction, which is quite nice, because sometimes you get to meet a different community that you wouldn't otherwise naturally get on board with, or you get to sort of join in other sort of fun online events with people. But I do think I get caught up a bit too much in this sense of what is your sort of online self? And I mean, a lot of the more political side of things can be a bit of a curveball, because it feels like if you volunteer an opinion, then, and if it's a just one that you actually care about, but you would hope is also kind of common sense. For example, racism is bad. That is something I believe. I think hopefully most people believe that. But then you see people posting saying that racism is bad, and I sort of think I know this, but who is it performative? Are you looking for? Is that?
I think
sort of
It seems so interesting. We had Pierre Novelli on last week, and he
Yeah,
was talking about memes in the sense of like there are certain phrases, like "I can't stop thinking about" was one of his. That seems to have touched a nerve. "I can't stop thinking about"
yeah,
was one of them. That he just thought, you know what, this is kind of slightly sort of devaluing certain emotional responses, not necessarily, but on race. And there's all sorts of ways that people express how they are not racist or how other people should not be racist. I mean, there's a lot we could talk about there. But when it
yeah.
comes to observations, I don't know, about the government or whatever it is, it's like I can't stop looking at this, I can't stop thinking about this. And then we talked about emojis, which were kind of like the crying your eyes out emoji, which is like the highest state of laughter that you could ever
Yeah.
reach. But people seem to reach it at least twice a day now.
They throw it around. It's, I suppose, like the new version of I mean, an LOL, sure, laugh out loud. That could be anything.
Yeah,
We don't know what level we're talking. A ruffle, rarely used these days,
very
but
rare.
rolling on the floor laughing, that is on MSN Messenger, that would get dropped
Yeah,
pretty
that's got a
regularly.
bit that's got a little bit. I quite like that one. Which I mean, which presumes that the band LMFAO will have to change their name, I guess.
Yeah,
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 because all of their asses are still attached.
totally. Martin has just tweeted. What have you tweeted, Martin? LKT is good, but have you seen? Which is another meme. So we talked about sex is good, but have you? You know, I mean,
Oh yeah, 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 yeah. Classic. It is one of those things. I love memes, and there's something about like you have to have seen a few to understand the next one. You have to have seen like series 1 to 3 of memes in order to understand the new memes coming out.
yeah,
You
yeah.
got to go back to the start. It's a nightmare for anyone that's like just joining the internet now.
It,
Well, they're just going to be confused for a long time.
I'm wondering some of the visual ones though, like the one I call the head turner, which is I haven't seen it for a while actually, but the guy with the girl and then he's turning to look at the other girl. That seems to be a
Classic meme.
classic, really, isn't it? I don't,
That's going down in the history books. There should be like a rock and roll meme hall of fame,
a Rock and Roll Hall
and
of
they just
Fame.
get inducted, and people are like, yeah, okay, that was a big deal.
Yeah, I don't want to see. I don't ever want to see that go. And I've got a very high tolerance of repeats as someone who still watches Friends every day. Brendan, I've got a
Oh
very
yeah,
high tolerance of
sure.
that. Now I'm wondering whether we should use that as the obvious segue. I think we should because we can talk about Buffy and Halloween. But let's talk about Friends first. Now, obviously, I'd arranged for you to be on the show ages ago. It was in my diary and then stupidly didn't look at my own diary. But thank goodness you're still free. And then, obviously, in between that time, James and Michael Tyler passed away. So this is the Hollywood Reporter reporting it. James and Michael Tyler, best known for playing Gunter on Friends, has passed away at age 59 after a battle with prostate cancer. So, I mean, I think it was. We knew that he was ill, didn't we? I
Yeah,
think when the Friends special was going on, he obviously did that remotely and what have you. And he'd been campaigning on prostate cancer, so he'd made like everyone aware, hadn't he?
yeah. I think I believe the situation was he had been diagnosed with stage 4 prostate cancer when it was in 2018. So they unfortunately caught it quite late. But he didn't sort of go public, as it were, about that until after the Friends reunion. So I think his publicists and
Yeah, that
a
was
few
just
people
after.
connected to him knew, but he was quoted as saying something like he didn't want to be a downer to the fans, that like, oh, Gunther's got cancer or anything like that. So which I think is totally understandable, because the performance and the character that he gave to the world, although a minor character in the show itself, is still like a huge global franchise. There's people all over the world who know who Gunther was. They know who James Michael
Yeah.
Tyler was, and has a place in their heart.
No, absolutely. And when did your show hatch? When did this idea hatch to do the one man Gunter show?
It was probably in want to say 2018. So I was on tour doing a show called Potted Potter, which is all well, the whole
the whole oeuvre.
Harry Potter story,
yeah,
the whole Hogwarts story, and that was a load of fun. And while we were on tour, it's just a two-man show. One guy plays Harry, I play everyone else. That's the thing. Written by Dan and Jeff, who've done a whole bunch of Dan Clarkson and Jeff Turner. They've done a bunch of potted
Dan Clarkson.
parody.
Is that the stand? Not Dan, was he stand-up? Dan Clarkson.
No, he's a comedy writer. He's done a fair bit of TV bits and bobs.
Certainly the name rings a bell.
But writes a lot of parodies, stage adaptations and things like that. But while we're on tour, I was watching a lot of Friends because we were away in the States for many months at a time, and there's something really familiar about it. Something quite reassuring about it. You can put it on in any order, and it's funny and it's nostalgic.
I mean, it's like putting on a fire. As far as it's like putting on the fire. It's like you come home and I mean, because I've watched it so many times before, I don't really have to pay that much attention. But yeah. I mean, it's something about the colours that are very warming as well.
The whole thing, it's it doesn't really challenge you. It's good, well written. The actors do a phenomenal job, just so well cast. And although there are some like very obvious things that on rewatching in 2021 are kind of absurd, like the fact that it's so white. The fact that there are...
I think it was discussed at the time. I mean, the thing is, I think this the younger generation, whichever generation I'm talking about, is not millennials anymore, but there's a swathe of people, and I think this kind of backlash to Friends did get a bit overhyped, because I'm amazed by how many younger people still watch it. I'm very pleased about it. But I mean, actually, we were aware of this at the time. It did get flack at the time. There were issues. I mean, putting the non-white characters in sort of positions of power was a very not wholly satisfying way of balancing things. But that's essentially what happened in certain episodes. But yeah, I mean, it was sort of deficient, I think, in that respect.
It certainly wasn't unique to the show. It seems to be something that was the case in a lot of... Not that makes it okay, but obviously looking back now, we go, well, it's New York. That is crazy.
Well, actually, it's really interesting you say that, because also two things, as you're talking, you just remind me that there were some, there were black sitcoms around that time that were massive. Obviously, Cosby Show, whatever, that started before that. But I mean, there were massive. We watched black sitcoms, but also, I mean, I'm sure about this, but New York, sort of 80s, 90s. I know that Friends would come back and they would say to me, "Wow, it's really not like London, because everyone seems to kind of really socialise within their sort of their own sort of group, as it were." So I don't know. But of course, it was made in LA, so I mean, you go figure. But yeah,
I suppose you could argue that they're meant to be in the West Village or something, which is a kind of
property prices alone just make it sort of slightly laughable. But
if you're looking for plot holes,
there's
no shortage. But then there's also loads of things that they did, so infinitely well. And what I try and do in my show is, well, obviously the idea is it's all 236 episodes told in just over an hour through the eyes of Gunther, as obviously made famous by James Michael Tyler, and we pull up some of those things. It's a loving parody. We're sort of highlighting and poking fun at some of the things that they missed out, or perhaps didn't play quite how they would be played were this show to be made now.
So is it do you tell it as if he's kind of reading the journal of the last 10 years almost?
Well, the idea is that we sort of open on Gunther on the night of the final episode, May 6th, 2004. And the gang have just left. They've just gone, and he's trying to find out where his friends were, obviously as the seventh friend.
Brilliant.
So he revisits his diaries. He goes back. It's a kind of gumshoe approach.
Right.
Yeah, which is
very
silly.
Sounds so loving. Yeah,
it is. It is good, and it's been a bit of a weird week. Obviously, knowing that he's died. Yeah. 59. That's no age at all.
I know. Just reading it out, just reminding myself how young he was is insane.
Yeah.
And you had some media interest in you, obviously, because of James Michael Tyler passing and because of doing the Gunter show, didn't you? I think you appeared on a few shows talking about it.
Yeah, I'd sort of we've been sort of doing a few promo spots on the lead up to Edinburgh, that we did a run there over the very strange Lost Fringe that took place over August. And then also I've got some shows coming up next week and over the next 3 weeks. So I was on the radio just last month, and then obviously all this happened. So all those same people phoned up again and said, do you mind coming on to have a chat? Which I didn't mind at all. I think he's a really interesting guy, and from everything that I've seen and read, he's just been universally loved. And it would be so easy for him to have become just a terrible Hollywood person. But that really, really wasn't the case. It does feel a little bit strange because obviously I'm plugging my show, and there's a part of me that's like, I know I'm only on those, radio shows because I've got a show coming up. Yeah. But from like the outpouring in general from fans of Friends, it seems like people really, really did love him, and I think that's kind of the best send-off you could kind of hope for as a performer.
I mean, that's true. It's like people can't look at your show and go, oh, too soon, because it was a show that pre-existed,
Yeah, and it's not so much about James the actor. It's effectively a story of a super fan who is basically based on me, who wants to relive the whole story, who wants to revisit it and sort of retell it through the eyes of his favourite character.
Yeah, it just sounds so brilliant. I can't wait to see it properly. I mean, it is essentially it's a very loving tribute. I mean, the Gunter character is quite incredible, really, because it's really quite a sort of it's a sort of holding his unrequited love for as long as he did, and there is almost a kind of sort of seething, brooding presence there, and some of the things that are around, quite sinister, but it's done in such a brilliant way. To carry that off.
Absolutely, and it's interesting because I mean, in the past, people have sort of said, "Oh, well, he's not like." They've sort of not considered him on par with the other main cast. But if I can only tell you from my own experience, it is so much harder to deliver a line that is like one word or two words than it is if you've got a couple of pages of dialogue, because you worry about how am I going to say, you sort of reduce it to the syllables. How am I going to perform this while also obviously being natural and hit the, have the comic timing.
It's true. You've got to go from a standing start, really, haven't you, for that line?
Exactly. Yeah.
And the whole rhythm's just got to be not displaced by that delivery. So, yeah, that's brilliant. Well, I mean, it's so sad. I mean, as you say, 59 is absolutely no age, and I think the show offers an opportunity to sort of pay homage, not just to the show but to the character, and as well, which is really nice.
Yeah, we'll be doing. We're raising some money as well for Prostate Cancer UK. So obviously, I think basically from his diagnosis onwards, James became a huge advocate for the Prostate Cancer Foundation in the US, and raised a load of money for them, as well as awareness. So we're hoping to just follow and hopefully make a bit of money for them over the next few weeks, certainly.
Oh, that's fantastic. So let's bring it up to date. Let's do the sort of comedy, the sitcom ones back to back. Let's bring things up to date now with Stath Lets Flats. So this is Channel 4's tweet. It's just basically announcing multi-BAFTA award-winning Stath Lets Flats is back on your screens Tuesday 10:15 p.m. on Channel 4. All episodes available after on all four. So was this Tuesday the first episode of the new series?
Yes, series 3.
It's series 3, is it now? Goodness, right? Oh,
yeah, okay. they've been busy.
Yeah.
When I was picking like tweets, I wasn't sure. I feel like they're quite. I don't know. I was like, these are just very matter of fact. But I wanted to talk about this particular subject because I love Stath Lets Flats. I just think it's one of the funniest things on TV. Just the writing, the performance. It feels like, I mean, Jamie Demetriou has just come up with one of the best British sitcom characters since Alan Partridge.
Yeah, right, okay, that's no small kudos there.
Yeah. And I think it's just such a wonderful, strange, funny, endearing show. Yeah,
it's interesting. I mean, this is sort of, I'll be kicked out of the comedy community, but gotta say, I've not watched it properly. I watched a bit the other night, and I need to sort of get into it a bit more. I'm sort of really interested on. I'm a slavish watcher of Jeremy Vine's Channel 5 show, which that's how I get all my news, sadly. And it's like watching Friends for me. All the panelists have become my extended family. But this week on their Friday television sort of catch up, Stath Lets Flats, was it this week or last week? But anyways, Stath Lets Flats came up, and I can't remember. I think it was Jeremy Vine had said something before about the commitment to that accent, and obviously Jamie's got sort of Greek heritage. It's not come out of nowhere, but the commitment to that accent, it's quite old, so it's quite anachronistic in the sense that there's a bit of Stavros, Jeremy Vine bingo, as Martin says, because I always mention it on every show. There is, I mean, obviously Harry Enfield was not Greek, or never has been Greek, as far as I know. So now that character, which I absolutely loved, Stavros, and I loved Friday Night Live and Saturday Live, but I think that would probably be too much to take. Whereas Jamie can sort of do it because of Natasha as well, because of their heritage. I think it makes it a bit easier. But it's so full on that
it is. It's understandable. There's like I think it would feel like too broad. It's certainly broader than a lot of comedies that have come out in recent years. But it's just played so well. I don't know exactly what it is. I think it's because there's real charm and there's an innocence to it, and you really sort of root for these idiots that just keep on tripping up and keep on failing to succeed. But there's so much love in the program.
Do you think he's done more for the popularity of lettings agents than could possibly be imagined?
I still feel terribly about Foxtons, and that's something that will never pass me. But they
well, this is okay. That's interesting, and you can if you feel that, and then okay, but you can still watch
it.
For the
little guys. Perhaps maybe it is a rebranding opportunity for them.
Because I think there is an issue. There is an issue with that sort of thing. I mean, there was I think one of Phoebe Waller-Bridge's first sitcom was about tenants of vacant property, and I find that hard watch for a number of reasons. But you know, I'm sure if we go back to it now, I could probably take something out of it. But there must be people who have issues with lettings agents that might actually find that a bit of a hurdle to get through. You know,
not indulging this idea that they're relatable, normal people. No way.
But then there is something. I suppose there is something sort of grotesque about the Stath character that also, as well as like you might be rooting for him, but it's also sort of something so sort of crazy, and maybe that's also helpful in terms of like if you've got, maybe that's helpful to get over your sort of lettings agent angst. I don't know.
Yeah, I'd say if you've got a problem, a phobia of letting agents, then this could be the cure.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's good. Well, 3 series as well. I mean, that speaks for itself, doesn't it? Really. And
They got a handful of BAFTAs as well, I think, in the last outing, and just the talent throughout. It's a mix of people that have become more well known. Obviously, Jamie has done a bunch of films now, and Natasha is probably best known for like What We Do in the Shadows.
Yeah, that's right.
But then like Kyle, who plays Dean, is a friend of mine, and we're in an improv show together, BattleActs. And he's leading Ghosts as well, and all this has sort of happened, I think, over the last sort of 3 or 4 years. And it's also been a long time coming, because I think the first BLAP that came out for Stath was
it is quite a while.
6 or 7 years ago.
Because Jamie was doing really well in in Edinburgh, and then the BLAP, but yeah, you're right. I mean, but it has really turned into a success story, which is great. I mean, because there aren't that many British comedy sitcom success stories necessarily.
No, I mean,
really? Not lately.
Unfortunately, no. I mean, in a sort of global sense, I don't know if this is making it across the other side of the pond. I think they'd probably stumble over understanding what a flat is, what letting it be. I don't know. How would you translate Stath Lets Flats?
I mean, I don't know. I mean, look, they're rent. I mean, it's all sort of, if you're thinking about New York, it's all sort of rent control still and what have you. Yeah. But I'm not sure. I mean, there's real estate is I mean, I'm sure that maybe they would actually just go. They just transfer it from the lettings department into the sales department, and then they'll be fine.
Oh yeah,
they'll be fine.
Yeah.
Brilliant. Okay, well that's Stath Lets Flats. Now let's crunch into your other tweets here now. Well, let's have oh goodness me. Right. Because we've done 2 comedy related ones. Let's go. I'm not saying it's not comedy, but let's go into the talk radio. Oh goodness me, the cement mixer, as it were. So this is this talk radio's tweeting out the clip from what's Mike says? It's Mike Graham, isn't it?
Yeah.
So Mike Graham, talk radio host, his interview with Insulate Britain or Inculate Britain. Insulate Britain spokesman Cameron last less than a minute. So they tweeted the clip, so I think we're okay to play it. And let's play it and dig in properly from the beginning.
Morning, Mike.
Oh, hello. What are you glued to, Cameron?
Just your screen, unfortunately.
Unfortunately? What do you do for a living, Cameron?
I'm a carpenter.
A carpenter, right. So how safe is that for the climate?
Well, I work with timber, which is a much more sustainable material rather than concrete. I also
But you work with trees that have been cut down then, don't you?
It's a sustainable building practice.
How is it sustainable if you're killing trees?
Because it's regenerative, you can grow trees.
Right. Well, you can grow all sorts of things, can't you?
Well, you can't grow concrete.
You can.
Oh.
See you, Cameron. Cheerio.
Oh, my Lord.
That was Cameron. He grows trees and then cuts them down and then makes things from them. Brilliant. Marvellous. I don't think I ever want to talk to any of those people.
Oh, Mike. Dear, oh, dear. Oh, God.
It's just the pause, the silence, that moment right there. But, I mean, it's actually a really sort of beautifully honed comedy scene in itself.
It's
That
self-honing.
Yeah.
It's a self-honing sketch about regenerative products.
Yeah, it's wild. It's ridiculous. There's also this whole sort of the idea to walk away from that, the absolute brass balls on this guy to be like, well, I looked pretty good in that situation.
He came back the next day and had so it's Jeremy Kyle's got a show on Talk Radio, and then
Yeah.
he interviewed Mike Graham the following day about what happened. A much longer interview than that one, obviously, and it's and I can't remember what research he'd done about concrete or whatever. I mean, to be honest, I don't think anyone was listening at that point. It's a bit of a weird one because I mean, I saw Simon Evans tweet about it. It's like, gosh, I've actually had my first inkling of sympathy for Insulate Britain. I didn't see that coming, because I do think that Insulate Britain have united so many strands of thought against them across the political spectrum. So actually, one of my reactions was, well, this is a bit weird, really. This was like it wasn't the pendulum swinging in the other direction, but it was a bit like, look, these guys have already shot themselves in the foot, so why do you need to do shock? Why do you need to go shock jock on them?
Yeah.
Well, and I will. The other thing I should mention is that this feels like ages ago now, but I think it was like Tuesday last week, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And then on Thursday or Friday, again on Jeremy Vine, but that show's being looked after by Claudia Liza van der Puig. She's changed the name. I think she used to be Claudia Liza Alma. She's Channel 5 news anchor, and she stepped in for Jeremy Vine last week, and she was fantastic. And she had Cameron on her show, and I can't remember who the guests were, but she had Cameron on her show, and it was a masterclass. Where, I mean, it could not have been more different to the Mike Graham interview. And she gave Cameron sort of cut him some slack. I mean, she sort of slapped him down when he started shouting, because he did actually start shouting at one point. Oh yeah, it totally went out the window the other way. And then when he sort of calmed down and everything was back on track, she gave him enough time, space to say some things that were kind of taken on board a bit more sympathetically, because Mike Parry was actually on the panel, and he's quite a talk radio kind of mould of person.
Yeah.
But he also, he did sort of falter as well under her very sort of scrutiny, and the comparison is wild, really. But I guess that's the media channel. I mean, that's what Talk Radio want, I guess, don't they?
Well, I suppose, and I think the point that Mike Graham made afterwards was that if you're willing to, it sort of doesn't matter how foolish he may have looked to large swathes of people, if it meant that the clip got lots of likes. However, I can't really believe that was his intention. He thought, I'm playing the game. Yeah, it's just sort of wild that people that are clearly so well media trained just continue to do these things.
I mean, I think that gets to the point where he probably doesn't sort of massively care too much, and he knows that he was the butt of the joke and all the rest of it. But it has sort of served as clickbait to do what clickbait's supposed to do, and it's got retweeted and shared time. But it does sort of play to that question: is there such a thing as bad publicity?
Because this, I mean, who knows? You're right. This happened on the 26th. So, yeah, what was that, Tuesday? I don't know. It already feels like it was a long time ago, under a week.
Yeah.
So it'll sort of rattle around in your head a bit. But is it a cat bin lady moment? Probably not. Probably not big enough to. I mean, to stay in the great echelon of internet memes. I mean, but it'll stick around. People can roll it out whenever they want to try and undermine him.
Well, I mean, yeah, that's a really good point, because I think one of the reasons why it probably feels like it was so long ago is because everyone's had their sort of take on this. So I've
Yeah,
had reams and reams of sort of. So I didn't actually retweet much about this on. It's good that we're talking about it, because I didn't really do anything on the timeline for Let's Kill Twitter, because there was just so much, and it's like, okay, the concrete jungle, all that kind of thing. It's great though.
Yeah.
You know, look at what this tiny concrete acorn did in Coventry, but it's spawned this bus shelter and all the rest of it. But it actually gets to a point where you've seen so much of that, and you have to sort of mentally distance yourself.
Absolutely, it's like in improv, when you get a suggestion or someone hears like that sort of like a fantastic turn of phrase, and then everyone sort of keeps on jumping in to sort of do a new scene and throw their ideas in. After a while, you just think, let's get a new source material.
The bell has to ring and they have to move on. Yeah. But I mean, I suppose, in terms of actually, it was a moment of like, it had been relentlessly negative coverage for Insulate Britain, and it was almost kind of, I don't know, it was weird in a way, because I just think if the narrative is kind of self-interested, but if the narrative was sufficiently going to stop them from doing this disruptive stuff, that's what I wanted personally, because there's enough people have said that they don't agree with their tactics at times. I mean, Ash Sarkar said it on Jeremy Vine's show. Plenty of sort of left of centre pundits have said it. So this peed me right off, actually.
You're like, oh!
I was thinking more with my sort of political hat than my current affair, than my comedy hat on this one, really.
Right.
But, I don't know, but it was a moment, and I'm really glad that you've singled it out. Now let's just catch up with Martin's tweeting away. Credit to Cameron for one of the all-time great pauses. Yeah, his comedy. So Cameron's comedy timing actually on that was fantastic. I mean, it didn't start well when he said that, "Oh, I'm looking at your face." Unfortunately,
that was a little stumble out the gate.
I think that was enough to sort of think, well, in that case, if you don't like my face, then concrete's a real thing. Concrete's a thing that grows, basically.
Yeah, the gloves are off.
The gloves are off.
I'm going to say some mad shit,
now.
And you're going to deal with it.
So you have now, the last two, actually, let's do Alistair, because there's actually quite a lot to dig down in on this one. So I've tried to make enough time so that we don't, So Alasdair Beckett-King, who we love on the show, we featured, we talked about him a little bit with Matt Hyton, and we've had his tweets on the show before, inevitably. So his tweet, here's a little thought on how I reckon we're getting offence in comedy wrong. It's not really about who you offended, it's about who you didn't offend, and it's about who laughs and how they laugh. And then just to underscore this and illustrate this a bit, here's a joke I used to do. When you tell people you don't eat meat, they either bring up bacon or Hitler. They're the two worst things about being vegetarian. Also, the two worst things to bring to a bar mitzvah, his joke. So then he says, I can tell you that this joke is definitely moderately funny because I've heard enough people laugh at it. I've also heard more than one Jewish person tell me that they don't find it offensive, but I stopped doing it. I started to notice a certain type of laughter, a laughter that's slightly too performed, a her, or an ooh, or an oof. I recognised it. It's the way people laugh at bullying. We lefties often say punching down isn't funny, which is unfortunately not true. Bullying is funny, just not for the victims. But it's a funny joke, defends you against the charge of not being funny, not a charge of bullying. Which I think, if I leave it there, I've pretty much got the essence of it. It's obviously follow the rest of the feed. And it's all fascinating because it's obviously some self-policing. It's a kind of credo for self-policing that he's advocating here. And I understand why he's doing that. But that means you have to make a judgment on your potential audience. But you're a performer. Brendan, you tell me what you think.
It occurred to me to sort of mention this because I found it fascinating. I thought it was very well articulated. I think Alistair's a fantastic comedian. I mean, certainly during lockdown, his videos have just been such a high quality and such a great hit rate. I mean, the guy deserves a TV show for sure. I mean, they could just probably give him some money and he could do all of the bits, the editing and
well,
things himself.
Yeah, absolutely. He's mastered so many skills now, hasn't he?
Yeah. But yeah, this sort of occurred to me. I think because I watched the so Dave Chappelle's latest special on Netflix last night, and I'm a huge Chappelle fan. I've always, I mean, his stand-up is great. His sketch show, brilliant as well. And he's sort of consistently been, I think he's an offensive comedian. Like that, that's like partly what he trades in. But he's also kind of political and tends to have, I think he's quite clever with it. Sort of in the same way that, I don't know, Frankie Boyle has been accused of being an offensive comedian, but I feel like more often than not, he is sort of quite clever with it as well. However, the most recent special, The Closer, well, actually, I think Sticks and Stones as well started some, it started definitely some trouble. There was discontent and calls of, I don't know, I suppose it was transphobia is the main one, but it's caused offence and harm to the LGBTQ community.
Well, it certainly prompted one Netflix employee to sort of make their feelings known, and there were sort of demos, sort of for and anti, and there's been and then there was there was a bit of a Hannah Gadsby ding dong. Initially, she was having a go at Netflix for bringing her into the value judgment they were making, defending Chappelle, to show the Chappelle thing, and then I think Chappelle had a dig at her. I've not seen The Closer yet. We did come up the other week, and I still haven't seen that. It's bad. I've got to do my homework. Yeah, I mean that would, from what Alistair's saying, that he would fail the ABK test, though, wouldn't he?
The ABK test. Yeah, perhaps. I think perhaps it would. It's when people sort of, that idea that the people rallying to defend him are less interested in the quality of his stand-up and more in actually using it as a stick to beat a marginalised group. I mean, here's the thing. I'm a straight white guy, so it's not for me to decide what's transphobic. But for what it's worth, it doesn't feel that, having followed Dave Chappelle's work, it doesn't feel on brand for him to sort of to be careless and vicious in his attacks, even if he is offensive and does use.
But you didn't get that from The Closer, though. You've necessarily.
Well, the point that he explicitly makes is that he's using any sort of trans joke that would be seen as punching down is not about punching down. It's about highlighting the racial aspects. That everything he does is about race, and when he's doing a joke about the trans community, and he sort of references all the different times, all the different things that have been flagged up, that it's about a white person and the white response, the point where they trade in their minority card and become a white person again, which again, as a white person, I'm like, well, I'm gonna stay out of this conversation. But I think it's important that it happens, obviously.
I mean, I'm just interested in sort of, obviously it's his show, but I'm interested in what Alistair's saying here in terms of how it's different. I know that, so you're obviously not stand-up, Brendan, and your craft is otherwise, but it's you know, scripted and what have you, but you see a lot of comedy clearly, and you're a comedy fan. So,
oh yeah, and if the audience, if it was something that you roll out and you get a feel for what the response is, and if you think, oh, I'm drawing the attention and appreciation of a crowd that I really wouldn't otherwise be hoping to, then that's probably a good enough reason to sort of maybe change. It's like, who are you? What do you want to do? I mean, I know Stuart Lee, I think might have also been on that same thread, but his sort of evaluation of sometimes Al Murray when he does the pub landlord, his crowd, or I mean, I even like the Beastie Boys when they first came out and did Fight for Your Right to Party. They were doing it kind of as a parody, but they just got a load of frat bros coming to their shows, so which they didn't want at all. They wanted to sort of distance themselves from that world.
I bet they would have been great stand-ups, actually, those guys. But anyway.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I'd love to see the Beastie Boys.
I mean, they're far too talented in. I mean, they're good enough to keep them busy.
All of their music videos are hilarious as well. So
true.
you can tell they have strong comedy bones.
This is very true. So you also picked out another very strong viral video comedian is, where's Rosie gone? But she was making a very definite, this is not one of her viral videos, it's just making a very definite point. Friendly reminder, so Rosie tweets, friendly reminder that if you don't like me or my work, you can just mute me, or you don't have to tell me.
Yeah.
Does this, strike a bone, resonate with you, I should say?
Well, yeah, this is just one of those things. I mean, we're talking about Twitter, we're talking about social media, and this is one of the elements that I don't know, that the social etiquette in terms of online versus real life is so massively skewed. People feel that you can just say whatever you want, tag the person in it, like that's an acceptable way to behave. And it's certainly it's not. It's not. Again, Rosie's a friend of mine, and I've loved watching her videos, which she, puts so much time and effort into, and they're so good. And she's built this huge following now. But it's because what she does is political and satirical. It's right on the edge, and it draws the ire of a lot of people, often on both sides.
Yeah,
so,
no, that's true. I mean, it's an interesting, because I'm thinking about stand-up gigs where the comedian would say something, and what the comedian wants to do is they want that opinion to rest. They want people to accept it because it's part of the show, and it's not usually as a conversation opener. And obviously, there are always audience members at comedy gigs that always think it's a conversation and always kind of want to get involved. And I think social media sort of is actually, I'll pick up what Martin's saying in a minute, but social media is kind of, the gloves are off in that sense. Yes, people's opinions or personalities are different online. They are more unfiltered and unfettered, especially if they're an anonymous bot. But it's kind of like, it's tricky if you're towing that line, if you are sort of making a political point. And I think it really depends on the responses. I mean, if you don't like somebody's work and you are just sort of heckling with the classic "you're shit," it's you're not really helping on either sense. You're not helping to make you're clearly disagreeing with it, but you're not actually making a counterpoint, and you're just making yourself a bit mad. So yeah, I mean, I can understand why she would say, well, listen, you can have a happier time if you just mute me. Let's just see what Martin said. So I understand Rosie's sentiment, but are we in danger of cancelling any and all negative feedback? And I think that's sort of, I mean, I think that's what if someone has a negative feedback,
I would argue that it's very different to the Alasdair Beckett-King one, which is understandable. I think if jokes have been made, or any sort of statement has been made, and it has like real world impact, if it's causing, I suppose more danger to marginalized groups, or